We're on to our next lesson on group policies, and this time we're going to talk about configuring group policy settings, specifically focus on configuring software deployments or installations, as well as updates and removal of that software. And we're going to look at scripts, including computer startup and shutdown, as well as user log on and log off scripts. And then we're going to talk about folder redirection, a nice, safe way for us to have all of our users store their information on a network share so we can back that up, taking that responsibility off from them and protecting our data. As you're considering the deployment of software as well as the updates and removal of software, there's a few things I want you to be comfortable with. First off, the GPOs can be used to deploy software to users and computers, which means anyone accessing that computer would have access to that software, or any particular user, no matter where they log into, will have access to that software, which means you'll find the software settings under both the user and computer nodes. And some benefits of using GPO-based software deployments. It's very quick and very easy to set up. The deployment, it's built into Active Directory services. I don't have to install any additional software. Those client-side extensions that I talked to you about earlier, they're going to handle the deployment for me. Couple disadvantages. Only certain types of packages can be deployed. Specifically, .msi files. There's no control when software deployed, and that means if I have a slow link connection, I may have some issues with that deployment. There's no control in the order of software deployment. So if I'm trying to deploy multiple .msi files, I can't control what order they're deployed. And there's not any reporting features available on software deployment. So a few things to think about as you're considering the use of software deployment via GPOs. And if you decide you're ready to rock and roll with this, we have a 4-step process here. We're going to first make sure all the apps are MSI files, as I just mentioned. We're going to store those files in a network share for easy access, which means we need to create that network share for the software packages and then copy the software to that network share. And then we're going to determine how we want to deploy this. And we have 3 flavors of deployment. Assigning, which means it's automatically going to be installed. The user has nothing to do with it. Publishing, which means it's only going to install if the user chooses to install it. And lastly, file extensions, which means I don't have to even assign or publish it. What I'm going to do is wait for a user to click on a specific document type, maybe a .doc file. When they click on that, it's like, oh, dude, sorry, we don't have that software installed. Give me a minute. It'll deploy that software at that point in time. You can also maintain the software by either upgrading or redeploying the software if there's updates to that software, all through GPOs. And when you decide it's time to remove or toast that software, use the GPO for that as well. A couple caveats about assigning versus publishing. You can assign software to both users and computers, but you can only publish to a user because obviously it's a user's choice to install that, and a computer is not going to be able to make that decision. Deploying and updating software is one way we can configure a user's desktop. Another way is to configure scripts, and we have 2 flavors of scripts, one for computers, which are the startup and the shutdown, and one for users, which are the log on and log off. And we're going to manage these through GPMC as well. We're going to make sure that the user has access to a network drive where these scripts are located, and they're going to need read access specifically with a UNC name, a Universal Naming Convention name, to that location. When a user logs on, if there's a script that's supposed to run for that user, it'll run. When a user logs off, maybe we want to clean up any files that were created during their login, we can run that one as well. When the computer starts up, we can deploy software or we can perform some configuration options. We can do the same when that computer is shut down. We can use PowerShell or any other scripting language like VBScript for configuring these scripts. And another advantage of GPOs is the use of folder redirection. Folder redirection allows us to control where the users are storing content. Most users will say, I'm responsible for my own content. Don't worry about it. I'm going to store it locally. And then something happens. They lose content. And who do they call? The IT pro. Say, dude, I lost all this content. Can you recover it for me? If it's in a network share, sure enough, you can help them. But if they decided to keep that local, you're not going to be able to help out. So this is why we would want to use folder redirection. This could be used in addition to our roaming profiles as well as the home folders. We need to initially create the folder in order to configure redirection, and that folder is normally called a root folder. And then we're going to assign permissions to the users to access the folders specific to them. So I might have one folder called a root folder and then several subfolders for my different users. When configuring folder redirection GPOs, we have 4 configuration options. The first one is none. We're not using folder redirection. The second one is basic. We're going to redirect the user's folder to a common area, and we're going to secure the user's data. The advanced is to redirect groups of users to a common area. And the fourth option is configured by choosing the follow the documents folder, which redirects the user's documents folder to that network share. We're going to have access to backups and be able to restore that content. When looking with these folder redirections, we have to be concerned about permissions because I want to make sure people are not getting access to my content and you want to make sure people aren't getting access to your content. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the root folder NTFS permissions, and that contains 4 user groups. Creator owner has full control of the subfolders and files only. The administrator has no control. The departmental security group, we can use the list folder / read data, create folder / append data for this folder only, and then the system level has full control. Shared folder permissions, we have again the creator owner has full control of the subfolders and files only. In this case here, the departmental security group has full control. So you'll want to make sure you protect the data by understanding both the NTFS permissions that need to be applied as well as the shared folder permissions. Let's step back out to our image and explore our GPO software distribution settings as well as these scripts and folder redirection. We're in the GPMC and I'm going to go into our domain level, expand on that. You can see we have our default domain policies. I'm going to go right into the AZMTP users OU. And you're going to see we have the one GPO applied to that. Now we have the rest of the GPOs hanging out here. So I can work with any of these. In fact, let's just go here. I'm going to go to the MTP bad stuff. We've been working with the good stuff. Let's be bad for a while. We'll click edit. And you're going to see we have the computer configuration and the user configuration. I'm going to double click on the computer configuration first, go into policies. Under software settings, this is where I would manage the software deployment at the computer level. So I'll double click on that, software installation, and then here is where I would right click on the option and go to new, package, and here I would locate the MSI file and then decide how I want to deploy that MSI file. So that's how I would do that at the computer level. Similar steps for the computer level, similar situation. We don't really have any new software, but I would do the same thing and add a new package here. So that's my software deployment at both the computer and user level. Let's go into the computer level Windows settings, and you're going to see we have our scripts. Remember, we have a startup and a shutdown script, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. Here we have the startup and shutdown, and in here I could show any files that are eligible for a startup script, and I would be able to add from them using the add button. And then I can go to the PowerShell scripts tab up here, and notice as always the GPO is not configured, but I can drop this down and say run PowerShell scripts first or run PowerShell scripts last. So I do have that bit of a configuration as far as the order of PowerShell scripts. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel on that. And down here under the scripts for Windows settings at the user level, notice we have the same options for log on, log off. Also notice in here we have our folder redirection. So I'm going to double click on that and see we have options galore in here. Let's go into documents. That's a very popular one. And then right click on it and go to properties. And you'll see by default it's not configured. We can set it to basic and we can set it to advanced. I'll go ahead and click on basic to keep it simple. Create a folder for each user under root path, and I would supply the UNC for the root path right here. So let me go ahead and go over to the settings tab now. Notice grant the user exclusive rights to documents. Move the contents of documents to the new location. That new location would be based on the UNC name. And then what if I remove the policy? Do I want to leave the folder in the new location when the policy is removed? Or do I want to redirect the folder back to the local user profile location when the policy is removed? So you can configure what happens if you should choose to remove this GPO. So this is where I would come in at both the user and the computer level and take a look at software installations, scripts, and folder redirection.